Now then, a new study commissioned by Friends of the Earth says the financial and environmental costs of global warming could be catastrophic and incalculable financially. It says a 2-degree rise in world temperatures would lead to widespread drought and water shortages, especially in the developing world, as well as a near total loss of coral reefs. A 3 degrees rise in temperatures would lead to decreasing world food supplies, as well as increasing desertification, again in the developing world, and the spread of preventable diseases like diarrhea. And a 4 degrees rise in the temperature of the world would see the melting of the West Antarctic ice sheet as sea levels rise, and over 2 million people in Britain would be at risk from coastal flooding. And more than 4 degrees, it gets worse, would mean a 50-50 chance of the ocean's circulation system shutting down completely and jeopardising the entire climate of Northern Europe. And the financial cost of all this, the report says, could reach £6 trillion by the end of the century. I can barely get by all the zeros. Well, let's talk about that now. We're joined from our central London studios by the financial journalist Daniel Ben-Ami and Germana, Kanzi, senior climate and energy campaigner for Friends of the Earth. Welcome to you both. Daniel, if I could ask you first, it's going to cost us a fortune. Does that make financial people like you sit up at last?
Well, I'd say, first of all, you need to be very careful about estimates, because really they're just rough guesses about what things will be like in the future. And typically what these estimates from environmentalists do is they overestimate the problems, but more importantly, they underestimate the capacity for human beings to actually solve the problems. And in my view, the richer we are, the more developed we are as a society, the better we are able to deal with those problems.
Germana, Kanzi, it's just a bunch of guesses, nothing to really worry about.
Well, the study that we're talking about was compiled by economists, leading economists at Tufts University in the United States. And it was compiled by, it's a survey of over 100 scientific and economic studies on the issue. So it wasn't written by environmentalists, it was actually written by hard-nosed business people. The findings that we have in this report also reflect earlier findings made by Shell, who announced a report yesterday where they said that the benefits of tackling climate change and the opportunities for businesses are absolutely immense. We're talking about 30 billion pounds just for UK businesses, a massive market. So there's a cost if we do nothing, and there's a huge opportunity for business if we do something, and if we make sure that we stay below that 2-degree threshold, because anything above that really is catastrophic.
Daniel Ben-Ami, businesses are sitting up now and paying attention to this. Whether or not you agree with the guesses as to what exactly is going to happen, they are, after all, guesses. No one can guess what's in the future. But big companies like Shell, for example, as Germana was mentioning, are realising that it's in their interests now to sit up and talk environmentally and act environmentally. Otherwise, we're all in trouble.
Well, I think companies may be doing things, but I'm not sure they're actually doing the right things. Because, in my view, the richer society is, the better able we are to deal with these problems. So we should be exploring high-tech solutions. We should be looking at things like nuclear power, which Friends of the Earth has campaigned against. We should be thinking about using more hydroelectric power. Friends of the Earth has campaigned against dams. And more generally, we should be looking to be a richer society. So, for example, you mentioned diarrhea in the report. And probably for most people watching your show, diarrhea is a bit of an embarrassment on holiday. In reality, 3 million people a year die of diarrhea, mainly in the developing world. And we can solve that now. It's not a question of global warming making it worse. If people had access to clean water, and 1 billion people in the world today don't have access to clean water, if they had access to clean water, we could solve that problem now. It's a question of economic development and becoming richer. And the richer we are, the better able we are to deal with global warming.
Germana, your response to that? It's not really just about whether or not the world heats up. These are problems we can solve now.
Well, sometimes I'm really surprised by the pessimism of financial experts like Daniel. He clearly does not represent the mainstream view of economists and the mainstream view of the financial experts. As I said, our report reflects 100 serious economic and scientific studies. And it's true, there are other problems that need to be solved, but there's a huge amount, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of money around.
But do you take his point, Germana,
problems.
if I can interrupt, do you take his point that if we're a wealthier society, if we have the infrastructure in place, if there are good water systems in place, supplying clean water, for example, to families in Africa where diarrhea is killing 3 million people, I think Daniel was saying, per year, that if we're a wealthier society, these problems won't present themselves in the first place?
The report says specifically that if we do nothing and leave climate change unchecked, these problems are going to get far worse, and it's going to be basically impossible to meet the Millennium Development Goals, and we're going to have to spend a huge amount of money, a lot more than we do now, on development aid. It's going to be catastrophic for developing countries. So this is now the view of mainstream economists. This is what we need to do, and the faster we act, the better, and that's why Friends of the Earth is campaigning to have a new climate change bill, and we're now happy that the government is moving in this direction, together with the Tories, David Cameron, and the Liberal Democrats. And we have now almost 400 MPs on our side to get a new climate change bill in place.
Is that something you'd support, Mr. Ben-Ami?
No, I mean, I wouldn't accept the characterization of myself as a pessimist. If anything, I would say that the environmentalists are pessimists, because what they're really saying is that the emphasis has to be on rationing. Rationing is the solution. And I say, first of all, rationing is not that easy to impose and not desirable. For example, the Sunday Times had a report saying that Tony Juniper, the director of Friends of the Earth, travelled to 3 continents last year by air. And I don't blame him for travelling by air. All of us want to travel by air. But it shows that in reality, we need to drive more, we need to fly more, and imposing rationing on people is not desirable. What we should be considering is things like more nuclear power. You know, nuclear power doesn't emit greenhouse gases, and yet Friends of the Earth has been against nuclear power. We need hydroelectric power. Again, that doesn't emit greenhouse gases. Friends of the Earth has campaigned against dams. Scientists have talked about more high-tech solutions to global warming. For example, possibly injecting sulfur into the atmosphere, possibly having lots of small mirrors to deflect some of the sun's rays. There's all sorts of things that could be investigated. But these things are closed down by environmentalists because they just want rationing. That's really their only answer to the problem.
All right, refreshing to hear both sides of the argument. You both, of course, have valid points, and we thank you both for joining us.